Trump is just funny. I don't give a what you think about him. That motherfucker is exciting. But that's the best part about America. In America, it don't matter who you choose, because we all gonna pay the price together. You don't want this one? Fine. Well, who's up next? Don't be complaining about who up next, just because it happened to be Donald J. Darth Vader Trump. Ain't nobody funnier than this guy. It might look like he don't know what he doing. He be knowing what the fuck he doing. He been president before. This time, he was not bull. He been office 200 days. He done 200 things. He do his shit today and figure out what the fuck he just did tomorrow. He found out all you gotta do is think about it, research it, make it happen. And this term, he said, get research the fuck out of here. We will not be needing your services. He don't give a fuck. If it makes sense to him, it makes sense. First thing he did is come in and fired all the wrong people. Fired 1,000 people at the Nuclear Security Administration. The next day he said, well, what did they do? They took care of the bombs, Mr. President. Well, get them the fuck back in here. You know I didn't mean them. I meant TSA, the one with the shoes. He fired thousands of people at the FAA. And then 14 planes landed upside down in 14 days. Y'all didn't say shit. Sometimes they land like that. No, they don't. If you're a comedian, you ain't never seen nobody funnier than this. He don't give a fuck if he already said one thing. He don't mind changing it when he needs to change it. Trump said, I will absolutely show you the Epstein file. Then they showed him the files. He said, is that my name? I thought he could never say anything else. Make me put my blunt out. This month, allegedly, he said he spoke with the president of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. My whole brain scrambled. Sir, you are the president of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So the question is, who the fuck was you talking to? J.D. Vance was in a corner. This is Puerto Rico, sir.
Here's an extended, entertaining commentary script. Katt Williams explains why President Trump is actually funny. Extended commentary by a hype guy reacting to the thumbnail. Okay. I need to stop everything. I need to literally stop whatever I was doing before this moment, because what I am looking at right now on my screen has completely derailed my entire train of thought. And I will not move on with my day until I talk about this. Until I process this out loud. Until I fully unpack what is happening with this title. Because if I just scroll past this without saying something, I feel like I would be doing a disservice to myself, to you, to the culture, and honestly, to the entire concept of comedy itself. The title says, and I want you to read this slowly, I want you to let every single word land. Katt Williams explains why President Trump is actually funny. I'm sorry. I need a moment. I genuinely need a moment because there is so much happening in that one sentence that my brain is trying to process like 17 different things simultaneously, and I don't even know where to begin. Like, do I start with Katt Williams? Do I start with Trump? Do I start with the word actually? Because, oh, that word is doing a lot of work in that title, and I think it deserves its own conversation. Do I start with the 3 exclamation points at the end? Because whoever put those there knew what they were doing, and I respect the energy enormously. Where do we even start? Okay, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with Katt Williams. Because if we're going to understand why this title is such a monumental piece of content, we have to understand who Katt Williams is, and what it means when he says something. Because this isn't just anybody making a comment about Trump. This isn't some random celebrity throwing their 2 cents into the political discourse pile. This is Katt Williams. And those 2 words, Katt Williams, carry a specific and very particular weight that changes the entire context of everything that follows them. For those of you who somehow are not fully versed in the legend and legacy of Katt Williams, first of all, we need to have a whole separate conversation about that, because that is a gap in your education that needs to be addressed immediately. But for the purposes of this commentary, let me give you the quick version. Katt Williams is widely regarded and I do not use that word lightly, as one of the greatest stand-up comedians of his generation. Some would argue, of any generation. This is a man who has been doing comedy professionally since he was a teenager. While most of us were fumbling through adolescence trying to figure out who we were, Katt Williams was already developing a comedic voice, a philosophical worldview, and a stage presence that would eventually captivate millions of people around the world. And what makes Katt Williams genuinely exceptional, what puts him in a category that very few comedians ever reach, is that he is not just funny. He is perceptive. He is observational in a way that cuts right through the noise and gets to the heart of whatever he is talking about. He sees things that other people miss. He connects dots that other people don't even know are there to be connected. He has this almost supernatural ability to look at a person, a situation, a cultural moment, and identify the exact thing about it that is simultaneously hilarious and deeply revealing. And then he articulates that thing in a way that makes you laugh out loud and then immediately go quiet, because you realize he just told you something true, something uncomfortably true, something that you maybe already knew on some level, but had never heard said quite like that before. That is a rare gift. That is a genuinely rare and precious gift. And it is the gift that makes a Katt Williams opinion on any subject worth stopping and listening to. Not because Katt Williams is always right, not because every word that comes out of his mouth is gospel, but because Katt Williams thinks. He actually thinks about what he's saying. He actually observes and analyzes and processes before he speaks. And in a world where everybody has an opinion and nobody seems to have actually thought about their opinion, that is refreshingly, almost shockingly valuable. So when Katt Williams, this man, this particular man, with this particular set of gifts, and this particular track record of saying things that turn out to be true, when this man decides to explain why President Trump is actually funny, we need to pay attention. We need to take that seriously. Even if, especially if, your first instinct is to either nod along eagerly or roll your eyes dramatically. Because whatever Katt Williams is about to say, it is going to be more nuanced and more interesting and more thought-provoking than whatever you're expecting. I promise you that. Now, let's talk about the subject matter. Let's talk about Trump. Because oh boy, if there is one person on this planet who has generated more commentary, more debate, more think pieces, more hot takes, more arguments at dinner tables and on social media and in barbershops and in boardrooms, if there is one person who has made more people have more feelings more loudly than Donald Trump, I genuinely cannot think of who that person would be. The man is a phenomenon. And I say that as a completely neutral, purely observational statement. Whether you love him or hate him, whether you think he's the greatest leader in American history or the worst thing that ever happened to the Republic, whatever side you're on, you cannot deny that Donald Trump is a phenomenon. He is one of the most polarizing, most discussed, most written about, most argued about human beings in the history of modern politics. Maybe in the history of modern anything. And here's the thing about phenomena. They are fascinating to analyze, especially from a comedic standpoint. Because comedy, at its best, is about truth. And a person who generates this much reaction, this much passion, this much absolute and total feeling in everyone who encounters them, there is truth to be mined there. There is something genuine and revealing about why people respond to Donald Trump the way they do. Why some people find him inspiring and others find him terrifying. Why some people think he's a genius and others think he's a disaster. Why, and this is what Katt Williams is apparently getting into, why some people find him genuinely, legitimately, objectively funny. And look, let me just address this directly, because I know some people are already getting their blood pressure up just from the title. Talking about whether or not Trump is funny is not the same as endorsing Trump. It is not the same as agreeing with his policies. It is not the same as saying everything he's done is great, or everything he said is right. Analyzing someone's comedic value is a completely separate exercise from making a political judgment about them. Comedians have been finding humor in powerful people since the beginning of time. It's what they do. It's arguably one of the most important things they do in a democratic society, because the ability to laugh at power, to mock it, to find the absurdity in it, that is a form of resistance. That is a form of accountability. Laughter can say things that straightforward criticism sometimes can't. It can reach people who tune out the earnest political commentary. It can puncture pretension and expose hypocrisy in a way that lands differently than a strongly worded op-ed. So when Katt Williams sits down to explain why Trump is funny, not why he's good or bad or right or wrong, but why he is funny, that is actually a really interesting and worthwhile intellectual exercise. And Katt Williams is, obviously, exactly the right person to conduct that exercise. Now let me get to this word that I mentioned earlier and have been thinking about this whole time. The word actually. Because I think that word is the key to this entire title. Katt Williams explains why President Trump is actually funny. Not just funny, actually funny. And that word, actually, implies something. It implies that there has been some debate about this. It implies that the humor is not immediately obvious. It implies that you might need it explained to you. It implies that Katt Williams has done some work, some real analytical work, to get to a place where he can say, no, I understand this now, and here is why this is funny, and here is how I know it's funny, even if you haven't been able to see it yet. And that is fascinating to me. And I think part of what Katt Williams might be getting into is the distinction between those different kinds. There is the obvious kind of funny, the joke you tell and everyone laughs immediately. There is the dark kind of funny, the kind that makes you laugh and then makes you feel a little bad about laughing. There is the uncomfortable kind of funny, the kind where you laugh and then look around to see if it's okay that you're laughing. And then there is the kind of funny that is so specific, so particular, so rooted in the absurdity of real life and real human behavior, that you almost need a guide to help you access it. You almost need someone to show you the angle, to point out the exact thing that makes it funny, before you can fully appreciate the humor. And I think that might be what Katt is doing here. I think he might be guiding us to an angle on Trump's humor that we haven't fully considered. Because here's what I know about Trump from a purely comedic standpoint. The man is almost cartoonishly larger than life. The hair, the tan, the hand gestures, the specific cadence of his speech, the nicknames he gives people, the superlatives, everything is the greatest, the best, the most beautiful, the biggest. Everything is at maximum volume, maximum drama, maximum everything. And from a purely observational standpoint, from a purely comedic structural standpoint, that is rich material. That is an almost overwhelming abundance of comedic material. The problem is that because the political stakes fall so high, because people have such strong feelings about him one way or another, a lot of people can't access the humor. They're either too busy cheering or too busy fuming to step back and see the comedy. And Katt Williams, because Katt Williams is Katt Williams, can do that. Can look at it with the eye of a comedian who has spent decades studying human behavior and finding the funny in it. And can say, look at this. This is why it's funny. Not funny as in harmless, not funny as in it doesn't matter, but funny as in there is something genuinely, almost metaphysically absurd happening here. And if you are a person who appreciates absurdist comedy, if you are a person who understands that sometimes the most profound truths reveal themselves through laughter, then you need to see what I see. Because here's the thing about absurdist comedy, and I think this might be where Katt is going with this. Absurdist comedy works because it takes real, true, observable things about the world and turns them up to a volume that makes them impossible to ignore. It strips away the pretense and the polish and the careful management of image and leaves you with the raw, unfiltered, absolutely on-the-nose reality of what is actually happening. And when someone like Trump, who is already larger than life, already operating at a volume that most politicians wouldn't dare approach, when someone like that becomes the most powerful person in the country, there is something about that which is so perfectly, so exquisitely absurd, that it almost feels like a bit, like someone wrote it. Like there is a writer in a room somewhere going, okay, and then what if the character did this? And it just keeps escalating. And Katt Williams sees that. I would bet everything I own that Katt Williams sees that. And he has the comedic intelligence and the analytical ability to articulate why it's funny in a way that makes you go, oh, I see it now. I couldn't see it before because I was too busy having feelings about it. But now that you've shown me the angle, now that you've pointed out the specific thing that makes this funny, I see it, and I can't unsee it. And that is the mark of a great comedian. Not just making you laugh, but showing you how to laugh. Showing you the mechanism, explaining the joke in a way that actually makes the joke funnier rather than killing it. Because the best comedians can do that. They can pull back the curtain and show you why something works. And instead of ruining the magic, it deepens it. It makes you appreciate both the subject and the comedian even more. Now, I also want to talk about the timing of this, because timing is everything in comedy. Katt Williams himself would tell you that. And the fact that this video exists at this particular moment in history is not nothing. We are living in a time of extraordinary political tension, a time when it feels like everything is at maximum stakes, and maximum volume, and maximum everything. A time when it can be really hard to laugh about politics, because politics feels too important, too serious, too consequential to be the subject of laughter. And into that environment comes Katt Williams saying, actually, let me show you why this is funny. Let me give you permission to laugh. Let me remind you that laughter is not surrender. Laughter is not apathy. Laughter is not giving up or giving in. Laughter is a way of processing reality. Laughter is a way of maintaining your sanity in an insane world. Laughter is, in a very real sense, a survival mechanism. And if you can find the funny, the genuine, grounded, analytically arrived at funny, in even the most chaotic political landscape, then you are not checked out. You are not indifferent. You are someone who has found a way to stay engaged without being destroyed by it. And that is a gift. That is something Katt Williams has always offered people. A way to look at hard things. A way to see the humor and the humanity in situations that might otherwise be overwhelming. So yeah, the 3 exclamation points at the end of this title? Justified. 100% justified. Because this is exclamation point content. This is stand up from your chair content. This is tell your friend in another room to come look at this content.